Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
Unfortunately, the majority of listeners missed the short disclaimer. Most tuned in late to the iconic broadcast and would be enthralled and terrified by Wells' realistic imagery.
Army bombing plane B-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Vogt, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. This is Vogt reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight. Reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine partially crippled. Believed hit by shell from Army gun in Watchung Mountains. Guns now appear silent.
The program bore striking resemblance to traditional newscasts of the era. Wells played Herbert Morrison's broadcast of the Hindenburg disaster repeatedly to inspire his cast. Radio offered live coverage that could be transmitted across great distances. This ostensibly provided listeners with a more accurate picture of the events around the world. The immediacy provided by the broadcast would fundamentally alter the way we consume information. No longer were audiences bound to yesterday's news. Radio told listeners what was happening as it happened. Wells' melodrama unintentionally exposed one of the shortcomings of the medium. The program resulted in widespread hysteria across the nation. Wells' brilliant direction had convinced nearly 1 million people of the inconceivable. Operators were flooded with calls from citizens distraught over the supposed alien invasion.
Every light on that board lit. Now that board was, I would say, almost a half block long.
Our board lit up when they announced that the Martians were coming across the George Washington Bridge.
Journalists of the day would condemn the broadcast for its manipulative use of trusted media form. However, Wells' program exposed one of the glaring shortcomings of broadcast media. No longer could information be subjected to extensive editorial review. The country was tuned into every leap and every misstep.
I simply don't know. I can't imagine. I mean, you must realize that when I left the broadcast last night, I went into dress rehearsal for a play that's opening in 2 days, and I've had almost no sleep, and I know less about this than you do. I haven't read the papers except the lead.
Social media represented an enormous shift in the way audiences interacted with media. Consumers were no longer mere observers. They were to play an active role in determining public perception and represent a powerful force in the dissemination of information. With the removal of its gatekeepers, potential for misinformation has reached an unprecedented level.
One thing that's becoming somewhat of a concern, and that is misinformation that's being posted on social media sites. All information relative to this case is coming from these microphones, and any information coming from other sources cannot be confirmed, and in many cases it's been found is inaccurate.
Twitter represents one of the many forms in which information is now distributed. A story on CNN's user-generated iReport recently triggered a small panic after it predicted an asteroid strike on March 35, 2041. During the Boston Marathon bombing and Newtown shootings, social media investigations resulted in the misidentifications of perpetrators. Most major news sources have fallen victim to hacking at one point or another. Results of these compromises have ranged from playful jests to egregious lies with the potential to trigger mass hysteria. Fortunately, as quickly as misinformation spreads, it can be expunged. Wells' broadcast triggered panic because it could not be immediately discredited. New media offers consumers the tools to verify information for themselves. Whether we choose to do so will have an immeasurable role in shaping our future.
So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, That was no Martian. It's Halloween.